Ready to see what the latest FoxAlien laser is capable of? Well, keep watching. So yes, this is the little beast we are reviewing today, the FoxAlien 80 watt 20 watt diode laser. I'll come back to those values in a second, but if you are new to the channel, love laser or CNC, make sure you hit that little subscribe button down in the corner to get all the latest tips, tricks, tutorials and reviews. Now, if you are not familiar with FoxAlien, they are a laser and CNC manufacturer, primarily in desktop machines that operate across both of those markets. And this is their latest offering to the market. As I say, it is an 80 watt input laser with a 20 watt output laser. Now the output is the most important value because it is essentially how much power is coming out of the end of the laser, and ultimately is going to determine what you can actually engrave and cut with this particular laser. But the input value is also important. Now the reason I say this is because some of the competitors of this laser are using a lot more power to achieve those 20 watt results. So what that actually means is this is a very efficient laser and it is not cutting corners. I have verified the output of this laser and it is actually coming out at above 22 watts. So you're actually pretty much getting 10% more than what you actually are sold with the laser. Now you will see it is larger than your average lasers that we are used to seeing because essentially it houses 4 separate diodes. So to achieve that 20 watt output, it is 4 5 watt diodes generating that power that are all focused down the center to get the laser output that we are after. So basically that is why it needs a slightly bigger housing. We are talking nearly 65 millimeters on the width and nearly 150 millimeters on the height. But for most of the FoxAlien machines, this will fit and it comes with all the relevant parts to get it attached to the different FoxAlien machines. The focusing depth of this laser is 40 millimeters. So from the base unit there down to your material is a gap of 40 millimeters, and that is the same as the depth block that comes within the kit. However, I wanted to verify that, so I did some focus testing just to make sure it is spot on 40 millimeters. Once I verified that it was, I then made this little 3D printed jig to essentially set the depth. Rather than keep having one of those blocks risking losing it, this just sits on the side of the machine and I can easily drop it down to set the correct depth of the laser whenever I'm doing any jobs. So obviously for the purpose of today, this is mounted on the FoxAlien Machita Pro, but I should point out that this is going to work with pretty much most of your modern machines. Anything that can output a PWM signal, this will work with. And because of the separate power module that is supplied with it, you don't have to worry about burning out your board because all the power comes from a separate supply. So with the laser setup, the focal depth confirmed, it was time to move on to some power scale testing. Now I adjusted the settings on the Machita Pro and I got this up to around 8 to 9,000 before it really started to maximize the speed this machine is capable of. But what we can see on the gradient is that it is still outputting a full scale at around 8 to 9,000 millimeters per minute. So if you have a base frame that can go even faster than that, maybe to 10,000, even 20,000, you're going to get great results for this at a very fast speed because of how powerful it is. Now on the opposite end of the scale, you may not be able to see this, but even at 2,000 millimeters per minute, this was burning a hole at about 90–100%. Again, it just indicates, as I say, how powerful this laser actually is. Now, if you've seen any of my previous laser videos, the next test that follows is a cutting test. This is to determine the maximum speed we can cut through your average laser ply. So this is 3mm basewood ply, and we got the speed up to 1200 millimeters per minute in one single pass. That was at 100% power, but doing 2 passes, we got the speed up to 2000 millimeters. So for cutting thin plywood, we can actually get some really fast speeds out of this. So with basic tests out the way, it was time to move on and start doing some actual jobs. Now, just completing a cutting test, the first thing I decided to do was build this little marble run. Now, this is a great little project, especially if you are a beginner. It all cuts out of one sheet of ply and is really easy to assemble. The file is off Thingiverse, and I'll put a link in the description area down below. But yeah, I had way more fun than I should have done with this for a grown adult, and it kept me entertained for much longer than it should have done. Next, I had seen on the FoxAlien website that they use this to cut acrylic. Now, typically, diode lasers and acrylic do not get on very well. Due to the wavelength of diode lasers, they don't cut through acrylic. But I wanted to give it a shot, and this is what I produced. I wanted a sign to sit in the background for when I'm doing certain videos, and this has been done with 9mm black acrylic and 6mm white and orange. Now the black and orange cut really well, 200mm per minute, 100% power, and I did it in a couple of passes. The white, however, wasn't so great. As I say, this is due to the nature of diode lasers, but it really struggled to cut this. I had to drop the speed way down to 50mm per minute and about 6 or 7 passes. So you can achieve some great cutting results with diode lasers, but what I would say is steer away from the lighter colors and maybe use the darker colors instead, and you'll get some really nice results. Now let's talk about the air assist nozzle. If you've watched my previous videos, this probably looks very similar to Jacob's Laser Wizard air assist nozzle, and to be honest with you, it is. They've added an additional tap on the side to control the airflow and an air inlet nozzle. Now my issue with this is the nozzle inlet is only 6mm in diameter. Just to put that into comparison, their own air assist kit has a hose of 8mm, so they're not aligning their products up. And also this tap minimizes the amount of airflow through it. Now with a higher power laser, we want to get more air flowing through it to keep things cool, to assist in cutting. So actually I'm not really keen on this type of upgrade. I know why they've done it, to try and make people's lives easier, but the inlet needs to be bigger and also allow more air to flow through the nozzle itself. Now a common question that always comes up is, can a diode laser engrave metal? Now if you look at the definition of engrave, it means to remove, and no, diode lasers cannot, despite any marketing jargon out there. But as the power of these has come on, what they can do is mark metal, and especially something like stainless steel. You can get some very great results like this. Now the lighting in here doesn't do this justice, but when you get it outside, you can really start to see the blues and reds that is engraved in the metal. The way I achieved this is doing a power scale test on the back to understand the different color levels I could achieve with certain speeds versus power, and then I transferred that into the design, selected certain areas to make them blue, certain areas to make them red, and we got this great result. And this is permanently on there. I've applied alcohol and other solutions to try and get this off, and it doesn't budge. The only way you're going to get this off is to sand or polish it out like you would do with any scratching metal. So whilst it doesn't engrave, you can leave permanent markings on metal to do some great designs that you want to achieve. So the RRP of this is $599. You can sometimes get it cheaper when on offer, so check out the links in the description area below. It may seem pretty steep up front, but when you actually start to consider what you're getting for your money, it doesn't seem as bad. There used to be a massive gap between diode lasers and CO2 lasers, but this is bridging that big void. We can now do so much more with diode lasers because of the amount of power packed into these little modules. Obviously we can cut very thick wood, we can cut acrylic, we can even mark metal, and the speed that we can do some of these jobs at has vastly increased, making your turnaround much more effective. So ultimately, it may seem a steep price, but we can now do so much more with these lasers and get more out of them, and it saves having to upgrade to a CO2 laser, which can be huge and take up lots of space. So if you are struggling with space but want to be able to do a lot of things with the laser, something like this is really going to tick every box that you're after. Now, is this laser for everyone? Well, truthfully, no. If you're someone that does fine detail engraving, such as Norton white tile methods, then the more diodes you have in a laser, the larger the focal point becomes. Now, we are talking hundreds of a millimeter here, so it's not a huge difference, but ultimately the focal point on this is going to be larger than something like a normal 5-watt diode laser. And also, if you're doing NWT tiles, then, well, you don't necessarily need the overkill of power within this. So that is something to bear in mind. But if you want to start doing cutting of thicker materials, cutting of alternative materials, and also things like metal, then yeah, you definitely do need the extra power within this type of laser. So after spending around 35 hours testing this laser, both with projects on camera and off camera, it's time to give my verdict. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't impressed with the power of this laser. I never expected to be able to get results like this on metal with a diode laser, and never expected to be able to cut acrylic so thick with one either. Just goes to show how far FoxAlien have brought the diode laser technology on, and keeping it under 80 watts in comparison to some of its competitors, well, it just proves how efficient that laser is actually running. If you are thinking of buying one, please check out the links in the description area below. They do not cost you any extra, but I may get a tiny bit back to help keep the channel going. If you are impressed, let me know your thoughts on this laser in the comments section down below. I really want to hear what everyone thinks given the price of this versus the power of it. Thank you to everyone for watching. The final thanks as always goes to my patrons. If you want to get involved for one-to-one help, exclusive files and giveaways, then check out those links as well. I will see you all on the next video.